Chapter 1. Glowing Lovers. The sights and colours of the rural countryside always made me smile wide and fill my system with a sense of joy, freedom and pride that I lived in an area like this. However, what made the place feel even more special was that now it was evening, and the warm, sleep-provoking colours welled up in my body like bubbles in soda. The weird thing was that a family from my nation was normally expected to move from a massive urban area into a rural area. They would spend at least 3 days there, and all the other Brits would expect said family to want to go back home again. But not my family. I had Iggy to thank for this. Well, to be honest, he didn't really have a choice, and even with us for company, he couldn't have moved back to Florida at 10 years old, let alone with little kids at risk of being left behind. Anyway, I counted myself lucky to be a Riley, because I lived in such a beautiful and advanced area. Even though I couldn't really remember an awful lot of it, I wasn't very happy in Florida for various reasons. One of which was that we had to walk to get to places, and I got tired very easily. Another reason was that I was cooped up indoors whenever I wanted to go to fun fairs in the evening, because apparently there was a high crime rate. On top of that, the weather there was absolutely stifling, and I could just see myself as a 3-year-old crying and wailing to Iggy because I'd had 4 migraines over the course of a week. Needless to say, I was utterly wired when we first arrived in Quinstone, because my little 4-year-old self was so joyful but confused as to why there was so much of this green spiky stuff in such huge areas, and ever since that moment, I'd been happy living in the countryside. This evening seemed like one that was going to be very special because of the stunning scenery and the mixed colours of the sky. I stared and gawked at the sky, which was balancing on top of the trees, setting fire to their black and twisted branches as it lit up my face with an alluring golden glow. I turned my head to the side and I smiled as my eyes met with those of my favourite person and my stunning girlfriend, Caitlin. We both smiled at each other as if we had been apart for several years, and now we were being reunited, and what filled me up with joy was that she was looking at me as if she had a very strong desire to do something with me, but I just couldn't think what. That was the reason why I was excited and cheerful. She was positively unpredictable. I had clocked onto that immediately, so I moved up closer to her, causing her to reveal a smile that was as bright as the sun itself. Oh wow, I couldn't take my eyes off her. The blinding beautiful torch in the sky looked like it was summoning a power off Caitlin that I had no idea about. It shone onto her face, brightening her skin and tinting her wild hair an amazing golden colour that I'd never seen before. To make matters better, her pupils were shrinking from the emitting sun, and I had the brilliant fortune of seeing the many details of her eyes that had, up until this moment, have remained undiscovered. As I stared into those eyes, I felt as if I was going to drop down into a faint. Caitlin's stunning brown eyes made me feel like I was being sucked into a world where nobody was there apart from us, and I had the feeling that we would be together forever without anybody tearing us apart. I was left there, still staring in fascination at how different my girlfriend looked. Wow. The way the sun lit her entire body like a candle, she would have easily been mistaken for a goddess. You look gorgeous, I finally managed to say. Caitlin's smile inevitably grew bigger. Aw, thanks. What makes you say that? I giggled, wanting to speak, but not wanting to speak at the same time. That was because I fretted that I would make an idiot out of myself, because halfway through explaining, I would most likely double over laughing with joy, but I began slowly, trying to maintain my composure. It's just, under normal circumstances, you look amazing enough, but now that the sun is shining on you, it makes you look twice as outstanding. I didn't expect it at all, but Caitlin took hold of my hand and squeezed it tight. She looked into my eyes. I could say the exact same thing about you. Huh? I said. What do you mean by that? The sun isn't... But before I could finish, Caitlin gestured down to my arms. I looked down at them and I gasped in surprise, for my arms had been lit up exactly how Caitlin had been, and at that moment I felt my face being warmed up by the sun, and my hair was being bleached a baby blue colour. My pupils must have been shrinking as well and creating the same effect in my eyes because Caitlin was gazing at me, looking more mesmerized than I had been. Caitlin was still holding onto my hand tightly, and she gestured behind us at a bench that was sitting on top of a mound of grass. I had to admit it was better that Caitlin showed me what she wanted to do rather than tell me, because it made my happy mood rise higher than a kite on a windy day. She led me over to the bench, and we both sat down on it and stared back out at the sun in the sky. By now, it looked as if the trees were burning, since there was a heat haze on them. Even just from the top of the hill on which we were sitting, I could hear the swishing of water from the river down below. For a moment, I felt so relaxed from being lit up in this way by the sun, and I felt so lulled by the sound of the water that I thought I was going to fall asleep on Caitlin's shoulder. Then I thought, no way, she's way too gorgeous for me to fall asleep on her. Larry, she suddenly said. I was abruptly jolted out of my daydream, but I was grateful at the same time to hear my favourite girl's voice. Yeah? I asked, fully alert. After all, if she was planning on us doing something together, I had to make sure to give her the impression that I was all ears. Thank you so much for taking me here, sweetie. She put her arm around me, while that and her flattering words made me blush. This place is lovely, and having you here makes it all the more happier for me. She brought me closer to her so that my head was leaning on her shoulder. I sighed inside my head. Oh man, Caitlin was being so nice and kind to me, and I loved her more than anything, but I still wasn't sure if she felt the same. I didn't know what was wrong with me thinking that, but what if she was pretending to love me? I felt like I needed to be perfectly sure, so taking a deep breath, I lifted my head up off my girlfriend's shoulder and faced her. Caitlin, do you really love me? I asked, squeezing my fingers uncomfortably. Yes, she replied after a hesitation where she tilted her head to one side and placed her hand on my shoulder. Why would you think I didn't? I shook my head and sighed. I don't know. I guess I just have trust issues. But that thought doesn't make me love you even less. Anyway, I only wanted to know if you really love me and you're not pretending. Caitlin placed her hand on my cheek. Oh, Larry, I would never pretend, because I really do love you. Her brown eyes must have had the ability to hypnotize me for a brief moment, because it changed my mind fully, and I finally began to smile. I love you too, Caitlin. I took hold of her hand and kissed it softly. You really are my world. We both stared into each other's eyes for a long time, before our minds both seemed to have the same instinct. I wrapped my arms around my girlfriend, and she did the same. My body loosened up, and I slowly began to relax in Caitlin's presence. Her soft hair was brushing against my face, her touch was like a work of magic that caused me to tighten my grip, and her floral perfume filled my nose and lifted me high in the air. For a moment, I broke away from Caitlin and looked at her, my eyes sparkling in wonder. Oh my! I just couldn't help myself. I had to take in the absolutely beautiful sight of her. The outfit she'd picked for this evening looked absolutely stunning and elegant on her, and the earrings she picked out for the occasion made me unable to stop staring at her. I was still under Caitlin's spell, so it was extremely difficult to describe her appearance in certain words. Is something wrong? Caitlin asked, since she must have known I was staring at her in such a way. No, I replied, shaking my head, and I was actually surprised that I was managing to speak during this moment. I just can't get over how gorgeous you are. I leant over and gave her the longest and gentlest kiss on the side of her face. I caressed her cheek with my finger, then twirled a strand of her hair around it. I love you so. But before I could finish, Caitlin wrapped her arms around me as well. There we were, two lovebirds sitting on a bench in the presence of a golden sunset, with our arms around each other and sucking in each other's scents lovingly. Man, I seriously couldn't get enough of this girl. Our hands started to move around each other's torsos, and we both sighed in relaxation and love, thinking that nothing and nobody was going to stop us from being together, and that we would be forever. I didn't want this relationship to end for as long as I lived.